Hello and welcome. I hope you had good coffee and you can stay awake for my talk. My name is Gitte Klitgaard. I am not part of the furniture yet because I skipped some years, but I might be in a few years. This is my fifth one talking here. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about leadership, management, and psychological safety. So I will share the slides afterwards. At the end, there will be a link to all the material I'm referring to. There will be my contact information, and I love talking about these things, so get in touch. There's a list of tips and tricks, and there's a link to a 1-hour version of this talk, where I also talk about the manager's three perspectives towards the organization, towards the people they're managing for, and towards the leadership. So that was kind of like intro. So I'm not going to do much to introduce myself. I have been very active in the community. I have been working with psychological safety since 2017 and was lucky enough to be asked to write a part in a book as well in 2021. So this is me. I'm on Blue Sky trying to get it as active as Twitter, not working, but at least people are nice. So basically the reason I started looking into this, I've been looking into leadership for a long time, but it just seems more and more urgent. And this slide I created a year ago, I think, and now it's like, okay, yeah, I stopped filling it up with things because things just keep going. And I mean, 4 years ago, we didn't think we could work remotely, except in a few cases, and now we have to. And there is AI, which is not artificial intelligence, but advanced machine learning, but let's not talk about that either. So there's things coming up all the time, changes, and it's faster, and it's coming, and it's very different, and we can't predict it. At the same time, employees, especially in Europe actually, are very unhappy. So I can always remember the numbers. So 72% of the people who answered Gallup's report of workforce said they were quiet quitting, they were not engaged. At least a third had an active intent to leave, and 15% would be quitting, but only 13% were actually thriving at their work. And I don't know if you went to Rebecca's talk yesterday, where she was also talking about our birth rates are going down. We have people that are being more and more picky. So it actually means that we need to do more as leaders and managers in whatever form we have. So everything is just faster and faster. Things are becoming more complex. When I started talking about Agile, we could go like, oh, yeah, we have a web page, and you just change these things, and you could do it in a sprint. And now it's like we have gigantic things, and we need a lot of teams, and maybe we should also cut down on that and make it more simple. And people are not happy. So what can a manager do? I also started looking into this because I got so tired of hearing the whole, we don't need managers in Agile. And I think people forget sometimes that Agile is fairly simple. It's 4 values and 13 principles, or 12, I forgot now. But the most important thing is we are learning, we are growing, we are figuring out things. It doesn't say you cannot have managers. It doesn't say you cannot have strict deadlines. It doesn't say you can't have heavy processes if you work with medication, for instance. It just says use it if it helps you out. So one of my main questions when I help organizations is, what problem are we trying to solve? So let's not just do things. So maybe Abraham Lincoln, I don't know if he said everything that's on the internet with him, but the best way to predict the future is to create it. So even though we don't know which changes are coming, as leaders and managers, we can go in and we can help our organizations be prepared for these things. So we need to change our organizations and our leadership. And to be honest, some of the things I'm talking about, I expected this to happen 15 years ago. But it didn't. A lot of our organizations still work the same way. We take someone who's a super good developer and go, ta-da, now you're a manager. And that's it. We don't tell them how to have difficult conversations, how to solve conflicts. And I know there are organizations that actually do this and train their managers. But I run into so many who have no clue. And a lot of them don't even have people skills or good people skills, let's say that. Of course, they can all talk. But you need something specific. Managing is a skill. Leadership is a skill, or several skills. And they are skills that can be learned. So We know that we need motivated people and collaboration. I mean, old-fashioned management by fear works to some extent. I think it's working very well at the moment because there are a lack of jobs. Then it works better because then people don't know where to go. But as soon as we start getting things going again, people are going to leave. We also need innovation over predictability. We like to predict things. But what we've also seen is we can't. We can't predict things. We can predict some things, and we want to know, what direction are we going in, but we can't predict everything. So we need flexibility, and we need brain power. And we need as many brains as we can get. So we need to engage more people, and we need to change away from telling people what to do, because they know how to solve things. We need to tell them direction, and then we have more flexibility, because if you have a big organization that has to go all the way down, then it takes time. If people can react within a certain frame, then we can react faster. We also need people skills. And my experience is that a lot of people skills like communication, collaboration, giving, receiving feedback, and management skills like handling conflict, having difficult conversation, those are just seen, since they're people skills. People know them. And I can't count the number of times where I said, I expect my people to be grown up, so of course they know these things. That's not how it works. We have different skills. Our brain can't do everything, so if you're really, really good at one thing, you might be terrible at something else. It can be learned, but the question is, do we actually want to take the ones who are experts at something and move them into a role where they need to learn everything over again? But we very much need this. And we need great management and leadership. And I deliberately say management, where for a lot of years I've talked about leadership, because I think that's very much what we need. If you have a group that has allowed to make decisions on their own on some things, they need to know where to go. You need to set the direction. And you need to be there for them. You need to be able to catch them. You need to be able to help them grow as people, but also as craft people. But it's just not enough. There are other things you need to do. At the moment, one of the things you need to do is to be able to fire people, for instance. That's a manager skill. You have salary talks. And at least in Sweden, where I'm living right now, a lot of the salaries did not match the inflation. I don't know if it did in any other country. Those are super difficult conversations, because as a manager, you might sit there with a developer or designer, whatever, who's pissed off because they don't get the money they think they deserve. And you don't have a choice. So you need to be able to also have the management skills. Basically, we need all the brains we can get. And I deliberately found as many. So the amount of different pictures of brains they have in PowerPoint is 3. But we need different brains, because different brains, it does create friction. But diversity also means that we get things we would never have thought of. As a white woman, I would never have thought of that it can be a problem with automatic passport gates. But the one in Barcelona, especially when they created it, if you were black, you could not go to the automatic passport control in the evening, because it said, stand in front of the camera, and you would have to go to the manual because it didn't recognize that if it was a black person, it didn't recognize there was a face. And if we do these things, and there are lots of examples also, young people, old people, disabled people, women versus men, we need all these inputs. And while to some extent we can think about these inputs, it's not enough. We need more people in there, because sometimes we will come up with things. I mean, we have things that we would never have thought about a few years ago. And that happens, first of all, from a need, but also because someone goes, oh, what if we did this? So we need that very much. And then these are also the things I said a little bit about it that a manager needs to do. You need to be able to say no. You need to be able to fire people. You need to be able to have super difficult conversations, and you need to be able to give negative feedback. Every time I work with someone who's become a new manager, when I work with them as a coach, I say, can you fire someone? And if they say no, I say, maybe you should consider not being a manager then. It's not fun. I had to do it when I was an engineering manager, and I hope I will never find it easy. but it's a thing you have to do. Just as when you work in an organization, you can't just do all the fun stuff. I'm an independent, I have my own company, and I love working with people, but I need to do accounting. I need to do marketing. I need to do all these things. That is not my job. And in every job, there's stuff that is really boring. For me, being a manager, the admin work of writing things down that, yeah, I'll not talk more about that because I can talk about admin work very long. So we need to do something, and basically our companies need to change. We need to appoint leaders that have leadership skills, that have management skills, that have people skills. And we also need to train them so that they get better at this. We need to have a learning/failing culture. I still remember a long time ago when I was in companies we had like zero-fault culture. No, because if there's zero-fault culture, people hide it. So we need to be able to see all the mistakes, and we need to be able to learn from them. Oh yeah, we need to provide space for our leaders and managers for coaching, for training, for sparring with each other, and for self-reflection. And I think one of the things we miss a lot as well is we forget to self-reflect. Most Agile coaches I know are very good at running a retrospective, but when was the last time you just sat down and thought about how am I developing? And I think especially for managers, because you will be managing, I won't say managing because you don't manage people. You will be the manager of different kinds of people. You will need to reflect. Maybe you need to work with someone from a different culture where things that works in one culture won't work in another. And culture can be countries, or it can be age, or it can sometimes even be two different universities will also create different cultures. And you need to grow as a leader to be able to do these things. And I still see this. At the moment, I've been looking at job ads, for instance, for engineering manager. At the moment, it is expected that you also code and that you're part of the team. Whereas when I was a manager, I know tech, but I don't code. And I don't think it's my job. My job is to be a good manager. My job is to help people grow, because I can't know what 10 people know. And still we do this, but we need to kind of move from you know everything so you can tell people more or less what to do, to moving to we want to provide a frame so people can function within that. And actually we need a frame. So H.C. Andersen is from Denmark. He wrote fairy tales, like The Little Mermaid. And when he writes The Snow Queen, she promises Kai the whole world and a new pair of skates. Because we can't imagine the whole world, but we can imagine a pair of skates. So actually part of what a good manager does is to help you see, okay, these are your new pair of skates, instead of saying, you can do anything in the whole world. We need to change responsibility. So I was talking to a manager, and I said to him, the department manager, and I said to him, what was the hardest thing about becoming an Agile leader? And he says that people don't just do what I say. He says, before, I would just tell my people what I wanted, they would tell their people, and it would get done. Now I need to take into consideration which of the teams is actually working with this part of the product, and I need to talk to them to figure out if this would fit in. Sometimes I do have to make the decision that they need to change direction, but that has been super, super hard. But I do it anyway because I know that's how we get the best things. And first of all, I thought that was super good reflection from the guy's side, but also, yes, we need to change, and it's going to be difficult. So what we need to do is the blue one's supposed to be a manager. You need to create that frame. Within this team, this is your responsibility. This is what I expect of you. And we often talk about accountability as something bad because it's used as single ringable neck, or if something goes wrong, who takes the blame? But accountable actually also means give account. You talk about what's happening. So if managers move away from the team, they still need a way of seeing what's going on. Do they need help? Do I need to go in and offer my help? So you need, as a team, also to give account, to have the accountability of showing what's going on. And of course, you can just answer that when people come in every time, or you can have some information radiators. And we need to have different role modeling as managers. So going from being someone who's really good at the craft, going and moving more to being a role model in behavior. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't know the area. I also run into people sometimes who are managers who have never worked in IT before. Sometimes they come, I don't know why, but they come directly from university, become a manager. If you have never worked in a team or close to a team that is doing software, you probably don't know how it is. It's a little bit like one of my first clients I had that wanted a mailing program in their portal, and he said, can't you just copy-paste from Outlook? That's not how it works. So we still need to know about the industry, we still need to know how things work, but we don't need to be able to tell them, this is how you set that database up, because we have people that are much better at that than us. So, Matthew also talked about this yesterday, about Google looking into what do we need to have great teams. And they came up with these 5 things, psychological safety being the most important ones. And they thought it would be about, education and engineering and stuff. Basically it was about, is the team dependable? Will they do what they say, or will they report if they are being late? Is there structure and clarity? Do they have meaningful work? Do they believe in the stuff that they are doing? And do they see the impact of their work? Do they know how they contribute to something? And then the psychological safety, which is basically, I am not afraid to be bullied, fired, or even my own self-image if I do something wrong. If I come up with a new idea, if I make a mistake, if I am challenging something, because if you're afraid of all those things, we're going to miss out on it. And that's a big part of how we develop things. So, and interesting enough, the first 4 things help create psychological safety. So it's all connected somehow. So a modern leader kind of needs to set that direction and frame. And they need to care for people. What they also need to do is give feedback. Often I will see, especially if you want to be super agile, you want to be nice. So you don't want to always follow up on people because you trust them to do things. But if you expect someone to do something, following up and saying, hey, how is it going? That's not about not being nice. Maybe it's about being kind. Kind is not the same as nice. You can tell people things in a kind way, even if they're doing something wrong or they need to change, but do it in a good way. But if you're just nice to them, you're creating fake positivity, which is actually super toxic. And you work with accountability and responsibility. And it requires a lot of work because we might not be used to it. If you are a manager taking the step back, you are not used to telling people what responsibility you expect of them. You are not used to, if you're an old-fashioned manager, you're not used to actually negotiating accountability. Teams might not be used to taking this accountability. So you need to work with this constantly and figure out, how is this? Because really good accountability is something you agree on. Yes, I agree, this is my accountability. I'm going to tell you how things are going, and I'm also going to be the one that's there if things go wrong, or if things go well, because we also need to talk about that. But there's a lot of mistakes going on, and the being too nice is one of them that I've seen for a long time. You have old-fashioned management, we have power, we tell people what to do. And they're like, oh, we have all the people, and they're super nice, and then we want everyone to be fine. That is actually so misunderstood. Because while it feels sometimes good, it can be very comfortable, we are not learning anything. We need to get feedback, we need to have expectations, and we need to have psychological safety. So the first mentioning I found of psychological safety is from 1968, which was about learning environments, that to have a good learning environment, you need to be a little bit uncomfortable and have safety, because otherwise it creates fear. Autonomy sometimes feels like people mean, oh, do whatever. But do whatever would be like this, like, hey, here's the whole world. And we do need to set those frames. So first of all, we are a company. We are there for a reason. We're not there to just have fun. Maybe you are, but then it would be a whole different company. We're there to make money as well. there will be a frame. If you're working with medical software, for instance, there are standards you need to live up to. The job for the manager is to set that frame and agree on how far can you go, what is your responsibility. And to some, that might mean that you can do a lot of things, and to others it might mean that you can only decide a few things. When Rebecca was talking yesterday, she talked about try to look at where you can easily flex and give that as the freedom, instead of focusing on where you can't. So sometimes you might give people one kind of freedom and not another. Not setting expectations, especially not explicit. So I was working at Swedish Television, and I was talking to some of the managers, and we were talking about expectations, and they were like, so I said, do people know your expectations? And they said, yes. So I said, okay, so if I open the door, go out and pick any developer, can they tell me your expectations? And they went, no. So we worked on expectations. Matthew also said it yesterday when he was talking about psychological safety in remote settings, that we need to make the implicit explicit. Because we can't read minds. He didn't say that, but I say that. We can't read minds. And then we kind of expect managers just to know. Don't provide them with tools. And we tend not to look at other fields. We tend to not look at psychology, design, hospitals, whatever. There are a lot of other fields, a lot of research that we could actually use. This quote from one of my friends, where he did not like to say, I expect of you. So he would say, like, we expect, or it is expected. And one of the things he realized when we were working together was that if you don't set expectations explicitly, people will have implicit expectations. So they will try to react what they think you expect. So I created 3 do's and don'ts. Set clear expectations. Repetition is also good. Follow up. Follow up on things when it goes well. Follow up on things when it doesn't go well. Show that you have an interest. Show that people matter. Create good conditions for people to flourish. Because that's really all we can do. We cannot change anyone but ourselves, but we can create good conditions. Don't tell people how to do things, because they are the expert. Don't try to be perfect. So one of the things that is in psychological safety is also that you dare be yourself, that you dare make mistakes. And what I see sometimes is that managers have been brought up with, there is only one way to the top and it gets smaller and smaller, so I don't make mistakes. So that might also need training. But as a leader, even if you are an experienced developer, you might ask questions in a messaging group. Show your vulnerability. Show that you make mistakes. Because that way, you become a role model for the others. Oh, they can actually also show it. And then don't give only negative feedback. I see this sometimes. I've had now 2 managers in my life. The first one, because I said, oh, am I doing everything wrong? And she says, if you're doing something wrong, I would tell you. So as long as you don't hear anything, you're doing okay. And then I had another manager recently who told me, because I was crying when I got feedback, and I was like, so I'm not doing anything right? And she's like, of course you are. And then she said, like, bunch of things in 2 minutes. I'm like, why didn't you tell me? That's not where you need to grow. Don't do that. People need positive feedback. And it doesn't have to be, let's sit across from each other. It can be anything. When you have the expectations, make them clear, make them explicit, make them relevant, and make them personal. And talk to people about it. So this is one I had when I was a manager. I would tell people, I expect you to make mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, either you are not feeling safe. We need to change that. Or you're not being challenged enough, and we need to change that. So making that very explicitly kind of gives permission. And even though I don't have the power vested in me to give permission, talking about it explicitly makes it easier for people to try out things, because it's okay if they make mistakes. And it's super hard work. Is it difficult? Yes. Is it scary? Oh yes, it can be sometimes, especially if you haven't tried it before. Is it worth it? Hell yes. Because by giving giving away the control, which we don't have anyway, we can make great things. We can make amazing products. And I also believe it is the way of the future. We need to do this if we're going to keep in business as companies. So, wrapping up, it is hard work to be a leader, and I think it's not going to be easier. I see companies nowadays sometimes even removing a whole layer of management because we don't need that. I think that's a big mistake. Because if stuff is not being done by a middle management, someone has to do it. And sometimes I'll have seen engineering teams that has to do all sorts of stuff that they have no clue about. Maybe we should actually have someone who helps them create that frame and helps them focus on what they want to do, or what they're good at. And we need that safety so that people can try things out. And we need safety for managers. Because sometimes we forget that. We forget that managers need safety as well. They need safety from their managers, and they need safety from the teams as well. So we need to work on that so it becomes both ways. And the organization needs to support. It's not enough to just expect things to happen. Just as it's not, you don't become agile just because someone says you're an agile organization. You don't become an autonomous team because you say, ta-da, you're an autonomous team. That's not how it works. We need to support. And it's a journey. So don't travel alone. See if you can, if your company does not provide coaches or mentoring or whatever, seek maybe a peer that you could do sparring with. Don't go on this journey alone because it's super hard. And I think in old-fashioned management, it was about protecting your turf because you don't want anyone else to come in because they might take your place. I think modern management is about sharing your turf and bringing people in and helping each other out and actually creating teams. And I think that's the only way we can get to what we want. Thank you for listening. As I said, I love connecting. I sometimes write on my blog, depending on what mood I'm in. And I love talking about these things. I could talk for hours. So please get in touch. If you have any questions, I think we don't have any time left. But I'm here the rest of the day, and if you have any questions, you can also write to me. So thank you for your attention.